Take control with Affinity's holistic identity solution. Discover, collect, and store your digital data and share your data based on your preferences. Visit affinity.com now.
इन्वेस्टिंग के टाइम सबको दिखते हैं ये नंबर्स, ग्राफ्स, फॉर्मूलाज। जो कोई नहीं देखता वो है इन्वेस्टिंग का दूसरा पहलू, ह्यूमन बिहेवियर। आधी पिक्चर देख के एंड समझ आता है क्या? इसीलिए बजाज फिनसर्व का बैलेंस्ड एडवांटेज फंड, जहां डेट और इक्विटी के बैलेंस के साथ आपको मिले फाइनेंशियल और बिहेवियरल मॉडल्स का सही बैलेंस।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Balance.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Balance.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Balance.
All right, so let's start now. And the very first thing, what is NAT? NAT is basically network address translation. So whenever we talk about the network address, it means that we are talking about the IP address, because networking is just totally depend on the IP address. So basically what we are doing, we are translating IP address. So whenever I ask this question to my participants, or basically to my students, they just give an answer that NAT means the IP address translation from private to public, because they only know it that we are translating the private to public IP, and that is basically used to access the internet. But that's not only the case. Whenever we talk about the NAT, it is just translation of the IP address. It could be from private to public, private IP to public IP, or it could be public IP to private IP. So either it's any of the thing, private to public or public to private, anything. If the IP address is translating, we will call them as a NAT. Whenever we talk about the NAT in the security point of view, there are two places where basically the translation is happening. Very first thing is at the source side. It means that my source IP will be translated. Okay, so at the source side, what will be happening? Source IP is getting translated. Whenever the source IP is getting translated, we call it as SNAT. But in case it is happening at the destination end, it means that its destination IP will be translating. So if the destination IP is translating, then we call it as a destination NAT. And in every case, the things of the translating an IP address, basically the types of the translation, they will be as usual what you already know them, and they will be same. The very first is static NAT, dynamic NAT, and then we are having the PAT. We also call it as a port address translation. Okay, so these are the part. So it could be happening, these things could be happening either at the source side or it could be happening on the destination side. So based on that, we decided whether this is like SNAT or the DNAT. Now let's configure this on the firewall, that how basically we do it. So let me open my FortiGate firewall with you. And this is the lab. I'm going to use it right now. So let me hide this written part. So this lab I will be using to do the NAT. Okay, so let me demonstrate you basically the lab, what it is going to do. This is my FortiGate firewall, and here I have taken a server. So this server is basically a Cisco router, and I'm using that as a server. So why I have taken that? So that you can view the ICMP packets what I will be sending here, and that how the IP address is being translated. Okay, I will be using this PC as a source here, and the packet will be traveling from here to there. And IP address on this VPC1, that's basically a computer that will be having an IP address of 10.1.1.1, and my server is having an IP address of 10.1.1.1. Okay, so I will be sending an ping packet, in fact the ICMP. So the reply will be coming from this server to here. But at the server, we will be enabling the debug of ICMP, so that I will be able to get that what exactly is the IP address of the source who is sending me the packet. Okay, so if I do that, then I will come to know that this is not the actual source which is sending the packet to this server. So that's basically translation will be happening at the firewall end to some other IP. So I will be using the IP address 192.168.1.1 for translating the IP address. It means that the packet will be traveling from here, and at the firewall, its source IP will be translated from this 10.1.1 to 192.168.1.1, and then it will be received on the server. That's what I will be doing it. So how to configure that basically? Let's understand that. Or let me write that to which IP I will be using for the translation. So let me add a text here so that you don't forget it. So this will be the IP and I will be using to translate its source. Okay, so this is the IP. Now I will log in my FortiGate firewall. Oh, this is the CLI. So basically I don't need the CLI, but still just I will show you that how it is. I'm logged on and I will check show system interface port 1. And I'm using the IP address as IP address as 192.168.29.211. So if I access this IP, I will be accessing the GUI of the firewall. So I will be using this 192.168.211. This is my IP of the FortiGate, and here we go. So this is my FortiGate firewall, and I think you might be seeing the colors a little bit different. So I have just changed the theme of the firewall, so don't get confused. It's just always green. So you can change it from the settings. I will not tell you how to do that. It's look your homework that you can try by yourself and just find out. It's very simple, but you just have to do some homework. My job was today to configure the NAT. So I'm for this thing, what I'm going to do, I will be going to firewall policy and I will just go to create a new policy. So this time I will be creating name as a NAT policy and incoming interface, according to my topology, the incoming interface will be this port 2. Means my traffic will be going from port 2 to port 3. So I will select incoming interface as port 2. Okay, this is already in use. So I will remove it from the previous policies where it is being used and make it free. Port 2 and port 3, both of them. So this is basically used on the DMZ zone. So I will just quickly remove it. Or I can just use the zone because it is used on the zone DMZ. So if I show you here on the interfaces, there is a zone as a DMZ and there I'm using as port 2. So either I can use this. Okay, so this is port 2 and on the port 3 that should be free. So that I can use that. So I will be using rather than the interface, I can also use the zone. So this time I will just use zone on the new policy. Okay, so NAT policy name will be as it is and incoming interface this time I'm giving as a DMZ. Okay, that's zone basically, and outgoing interface I will be giving the external port 3. So my traffic is coming basically from port 2 and going to port 3. Source I'm giving as all any traffic coming from to this one and going towards IP address 20.1.1.1. Okay, so let me check if I have an object for it or not. It should be something like sales server. Okay, it is not, so let me create it for you. I can create like this address and name I can give it as like server, and on the subnet I will be giving the IP range, and IP range I will give 20.1.1.1 hyphen 20.1.1.1.1. So if you observe carefully, the option was to do basically in the range, but I'll be just doing only one IP. You see that the first IP and the last IP, they are same. So logically, they are just a single IP while the name is an IP range. So I will just doing like this, and I will create an object. And this object, this server, I'll be using here as a destination. So this was the policy which I'm going to allow and all the services. But today's focus will be this NAT part, right? So by default, NAT is enabled, and I'm just going to configure that NAT. In the NAT, there are two options. I can use outgoing interface address for the NAT translation, or I can use the dynamic pool. Okay, so if I use the use outgoing interface address, so what is happening in that case? If I use outgoing interface for going to my server, it will be using this IP address here going to the server. Okay, but if I use an IP pool, so in that IP pool, I can give this IP as an additional. It's not configured anywhere, but still I can give this IP pool here and my traffic will be sent from this. Okay, so if I click it here on the firewall and go to option use as a dynamic pool and go to add here, and you see that there's option available as my pool, and in the my pool option you see that an external IP range is available as 192.168.1.1. So that's basically I'm using. If you this is already created, I will not be creating, but if you want, you can create it from here. Just go to create and create it as per your requirement. But it is already created, so I will just use this pool here. Okay, that's it for the NAT. Only this thing you have to do, and you are done with the source NAT. Policy is already enabled. I click OK. So my NAT policy is now configured, and in the NAT it is my pool. If you see other policies, the NAT is disabled there, but here on my pool it is enabled. All right, so now my job is to test it whether it is working or not. So I will just start this VPC1 and configure the IP, because this VPC do not save the IP addresses. So IP address will be IP 10.1.1.1/24, and default gateway will be 10.1.1.20. So very first thing, I will try to check the gateway if my gateway is reachable from here or not. So my gateway is reachable. That's very fine. Now I will try to ping IP address 20.1.1.1. If I ping that, I will be getting reply from here. You see. But is the NAT happening or not? There's two things to check that. Very first thing, I can check it the log and reports, but sometimes we do not get that traffic logged for the ICMP. So you see that this is 9 hours ago. So that's not basically the traffic I'm looking for, because for the ICMP, sometimes it's not getting logged. So for that, the solution is debug IP ICMP. So I will log on to this server here. Okay. And if you observe carefully, you see that it is echo reply sent. Source was 20.1.1. Source is 20.1.1. It means that this is the same IP, and the destination is 10.1.1.1. It means that NAT is not happening, right? So it means that it is replying to 10.1.1. It means that it doesn't know that who is basically it knows that who is sending, but translation is not happening. It should give an IP address 192.168.1.1. Why it is not happening? Because I am having other policies configured for that one. And according to the firewall, it picks the firewall policies from top to bottom. So already I have this policy which is taking the precedence. Okay. And because of that, that is pinging. So I'm going to disable this policy from here. Like I edit it here, and at the bottom there is a policy, enable this policy off. I click it OK. Once I do this, now this policy will not be in effect. Only this NAT policy what I have just configured will be working. I will try to ping now. If I try to ping, it is working, but this time it will be replying to another IP, that is 192.168.1.1. It's not replying to the IP address 10.1.1, what was exactly the source IP. Let me explain you a little bit more. This was my PC here. This was my firewall. And here is my server. IP address of the machine is 10.1.1. At the firewall, it is translated, but the destination is 20.1.1.1. We are seeing this ICMP debug at the this is firewall, this is server, and this is your host. So whenever host is sending a packet, the ICMP debug I'm seeing here. So before, when the NAT was not happening, my server was replying to the destination 10.1.1 and there was no NAT because it was not hitting the required policy and NAT was not happening. Whenever I disabled the exact policy and the traffic hit the my required policy, then the NAT was happening. It means that source IP here on this traveling on this wire, you can say, then the source IP was 10.1.1.1 and the destination IP was 20.1.1. Okay. Once it is crossed the firewall translated its source IP, and now the source destination IP remains same. It does not change. It will be sending to 20.1.1.1, but the destination IP, remains same, but the source IP becomes 192.168.1.1. It means that the source IP got translated from here to here. That's why whenever you are seeing the reply, because this is the debug, whenever the reply is sent, echo reply, right? So reply is being sent to the destination 192.168.1.1 because the packet received on the server was like this, and the server is thinking that 192.168, this IP is sending a ICMP request. So my server will basically reply to this IP. Okay, but again, when the reply will be going here, firewalls checks its translation table and looks out that where my IP has been translated, and it will go back to this 10.1.1 and the packet will be delivered here. Let me know if you have any question in this configuration. Basically, this was the session for the NAT configuration on the FortiGate firewall. That's what I covered. If you have any question, I will be waiting for 5 minutes. You can ask that. And after that, I will end this session if you don't have any questions. And this session is basically live every Saturday, 8 to 9 p.m. IST. You can join me on my channel. You can type your question on the chat section if you have any. If not, I will be closing the session in 3 minutes. Meanwhile, you can also visit my website for some of the topics. My website is thisfirstdeveloper.online, and here you can observe some of the self-learning concepts like this FortiGate firewall, checkpoint, and Palo Alto. You can go through them. And I'll be live every Saturday, 8 to 9 p.m. And if you have any question during these sessions, you can ask me here on YouTube. If you have no question, I'll be closing session in 2 minutes. All right, so I don't see any questions. Seems like I'm teaching very good or very bad. I don't know, but I don't find any. So I'm closing this, and feel free to reach me anytime. You can either reach me, write me on the comment section on this video, or you can reach me on WhatsApp as well. You might be having my contact number on this site here on the bottom contact us page. You can reach me here on my website or email me at this. This is also managed by me, so I'll be reaching replying on this. So anything you can do, either WhatsApp me on this or mail me your queries here. Okay, so I'm closing this now. See you soon next week, 8 p.m. Till that, bye bye.